Discovered my husband and his stepsister in a compromising situation when I unexpectedly visited his dad's house, and now I'm unraveling the truth. I believe my 24F husband, 24, and his stepsister, 23F, are having an affair. My head is spinning and I don't know what to do. My husband's parents got divorced when he was 15 and his dad remarried when he was 17. His stepmom has one daughter, let's call her Jess, who was 16 at the time of the marriage. They all lived together for about a year and a half before he left for college, which is where him and I met freshman year. Our sophomore year, Jess began going to the same school as us. He introduced her to our friend group and she quickly became a part of it. They always seemed more like friends than siblings because obviously their parents didn't marry till they were older, but they'd sometimes refer to each other as bro and sis. Back then I sometimes got the vibe that she was flirting with him, but he never returned it and I just brushed it off as her personality and that I was being crazy. BC, no way that would happen. Fast forward to now, we all still live in our hometown and see each other pretty often. Jess is single and hasn't had a boyfriend in several years. Her and my husband are still very close. When we are all hanging out together, including their parents, if we're sitting on the couch she will sit right up against him, sometimes even put her head on his shoulder if he's showing her videos on his phone. I have always found it odd but again have brushed it off. Of course they aren't actually related but it would still be too taboo and weird, so I've never fully let myself have the suspicions. However, over the last 6 months things have been getting weirder. Both my husband and I's birthdays are in April and only a week apart, so over the last couple years we've kind of just combined them and celebrated both at the same time. We had friends and family over, and normally we also receive joint gifts, but this year Jess got my husband something specific to him, fairly expensive gaming headphones and a watch, but nothing for me, and she also got him a card and wrote a decent amount in it. I didn't get to read it when we were opening things and then later on I couldn't find it. When I asked my husband where it was he brushed it off saying oh he must have accidentally thrown it out with its envelope, but the envelope was still with everything else on the counter. They've been texting a lot more and she's also been talking to me less. Remember, her and I have been friends for the last 5 years. Sometimes I'll see texts from her pop up on his phone screen and there will be emojis. This will be while he's holding it and he'll unlock it pretty fast, so I've never really been able to see what they say. If I ask her to meet up or hang out with just me, she's always busy, but if it's her coming over our home to see the both of us she never says no. He also has been going to see her more often, which is kind of a complicated detail. BC, she still lives at home with her mom and his dad, so he just tells me he's going to hang out with his dad for a bit, but I have a feeling it's for her. Him and I have also been less intimate lately. Neither of us have ever had super high sex drives, but we have always averaged at least twice a week, and now it's about 2 to 3 times a month. What's pushed me over the edge is when we all got together this past July 4th. We were at my Phil's house for a big cookout/pool party. While in the pool she kept hanging on him from behind. Picture him giving her a piggyback ride in the water, splashing him, being overly playful, etc. I kept thinking in my head I was crazy because maybe after all these years they really do have a sibling-like dynamic and she's just messing around. But I also caught her staring at me when my husband and I were being close and she looked angry. Now, cut to the worst of it all. We all were done in the pool and went inside to change. I was with my husband in his room and right in the middle of us changing she came in without knocking, randomly asking if she could borrow my hairbrush. My husband didn't have any clothes on. I was horrified and said something like you need to knock first. She seemed unfazed and lazily covered her eyes, saying oh whatever, he's basically like my brother. My husband seemed kind of embarrassed but also not as much as you'd expect. She left like it was nothing. Since then she has barely spoken to me at all and I am absolutely spiraling at the thought of this. Am I being crazy? I haven't said anything to him yet about this because I'm so scared to be wrong and then I'm just accusing him of sleeping with his stepsister. I need others to tell me if they agree with what I've been seeing or not. Small update, thank you to everyone who has responded. When I made this post I was hoping for validation of my worries but also scared of that at the same time. I'm trying to keep it together and act normal around him the best I can. Tomorrow he's going over his dad's, so he says, so I plan to show up there and see what's going on. Another slight update because I know you guys are invested. An update but not really. Yes, I did go to his dad's house Saturday. A lot has happened since then and I haven't been on my phone much. When I get time later tonight I will post a full update of what's gone on. Update 1. So much has happened that I never expected or was prepared for, so I apologize that I kind of ghosted all of you, but this has been really hard. Just an FYI, I'll be mentioning text messages a fair amount and it'll be paraphrasing. Leaving off from my last update, I did go to his dad's house that weekend that my husband told me he was going to see him. When I got there, only my husband's car was in the driveway. I wasn't sure what to do, if I should try calling his dad, calling my husband or what. I decided to just go in because I didn't want to play games. I walk in and hear his and Jess' voices coming from the kitchen and it sounded like they were yelling. Even now I couldn't tell you what they were saying. I was so full of adrenaline as I approached them it was like I was watching them on mute or something and not actually hearing what was happening. He spotted me and looked like a deer in the headlights, and all I could muster up was to say what's going on? I stared at them for a couple seconds and then my fight or flight kicked in. I'm very non-confrontational, so my instinct was to turn around and run. He chased after me and pulled me into a guest room to talk. Again I asked what was going on, that he's been acting so weird and so has Jess, and point blank asked if he was cheating on me. He seemed shocked at the question but then out of nowhere started bawling his eyes out. I've never seen my husband cry before. He said that no, he's not cheating but has something to tell me but couldn't do it there and needed to leave / for us to go back to our house. At first I protested and said no, I needed to know right then and there, but he still was having a breakdown begging me, so I agreed. We left his car there and drove home together in mine, but I sat in silence the whole ride as he cried and was trying to collect himself. When we got home we sat in the living room and I once again asked him what the fuck was happening and my patience had run thin. Then out came his word vomit. He told me that in college, our junior / Jess sophomore year, after him and a bunch of our friends had gone to a party, we were dating by this time but I wasn't there that night. I'd come home for the weekend to hang out with family that was in town, and he got really drunk, our guy friends kind of. He was left alone and then Jess kindly offered him to stay on her couch for the night since she had a single room. He later said he woke up during the night in a confusing situation, realizing Jess was on top of him and they were intimate. He told me that at the time he was feeling out of it and didn't fully understand what was happening. All he remembers is waking up and sensing what was going on. He then woke up again a couple hours later and she was asleep in her own bed, so he left and went back to his own dorm. He never told anyone. It took him a long time to even fully understand what had happened, and he felt like he couldn't tell anybody because 1, he felt ashamed and embarrassed, 2, he didn't think anyone would believe him, 3, he didn't want to be known as the guy that slept with his stepsister, 4, he was afraid of losing me, and 5, he was worried about his dad and if he found out, that it could affect or ruin his new marriage and that his dad is so happy with his stepmom. He told me he basically just acted like nothing happened, even around Jess when we all hung out together. He said him and her never spoke about it or said anything until a couple years later, when him and I got engaged after graduation. She sent him a text essentially saying she loved him and thought about that night all the time and that why did their parents have to meet and get married, they could be together otherwise, etc. Essentially she is obsessed with him. Shamefully I will admit when he first told me all of this I wasn't sure what to think or believe, until I saw their text messages. I questioned him saying if this was the case why are they always talking, why wouldn't he distance himself now that we're married and out of school? He told me it started up again with her, about 6 months ago like I said on my original post, when him and I told our families that we decided we wanted to try for a baby. He had a screenshot of the text she sent him the next day ranting about how he shouldn't do this, marriages aren't permanent until a baby comes into the mix, there's still a chance for them to be honest with their family and for him to leave me, she still loves him after all this time, etc. He replied saying he loved me and wanted to start a family with me and that he didn't love her in that way, and he never wanted her to bring this up to him ever again. That's when her demeanor changed and she said if he didn't love her, why did he /CK her and what would their family think, essentially blackmailing him. I read through as many of their texts as I could handle and it was always her saying things like she was thinking about him, she wants to see him, she'd even send texts while we were all together telling him he looks good in that outfit. Sometimes he wouldn't reply and others he'd be trying to have a normal convo / steer it in a different direction, and sometimes just telling her to stop it. The days he's told me he's going to hang out with his dad, it's her begging him to go over there so she can see him or she will tell her mom everything. So he'd agree to go but he swears nothing has ever happened, that one of their parents would be there a majority of the time and it would just be all of them on the patio or in the living room. That day, he went there to tell her he was sick of it and couldn't do it anymore, she could tell people whatever she wants but he was done, and that's why they were yelling. I sat there taking it all in and honestly was speechless as I did not expect any of this. I asked him about our sudden lack of intimacy, essentially only during my fertile window since we're trying for a baby but never any other time, and he said all of this being brought up for him mentally has made him shut down about sex. He was only doing it for me I want a baby. That it's taken him so long to realize / come to terms with the fact that she assaulted him. And how this harassment. I cried. I felt betrayed by her and then a heavy, deep empathy for him. I just hugged him and cried and he cried too. I told him he really needs to tell his dad because we can no longer associate with her in any way, and how can we manage that when she lives with him? At first he said no, he couldn't because he's worried they won't believe him and also doesn't want to ruin his dad's life because how could the marriage with his stepmom survive this? I told him I don't have an answer for that, he has to trust that his dad will believe him and I was also worried about her panicking after their argument and doing something crazy. He agreed to tell his dad and said he wanted to do it alone. The following weekend he met up with dad and told him everything, showed the text to him, etc. His dad believed him and like me was caught off guard and speechless. This led to him telling his wife and saying he was kicking Jess out, however his wife did not believe it. She claims my husband must have edited the text somehow, actual text in the message app that you can scroll through, and it's Jess' number attached to the contact. Jess freaked out, saying none of it was true and he was the one who'd been harassing her. That's when my husband threatened to take it all to the police for an order of protection against her if she did not tell the truth, and she finally admitted to everything in an insane meltdown. His stepmom is horrified, his dad doesn't know if he can get past her not believing my husband and accusing him. We are currently in this weird limbo phase of the whole family on edge. Jess is still living there, his dad has demanded she leave and has given her 2 weeks instead of kicking her out on the spot in an attempt to try and salvage the situation with his wife. My husband and I are having lots of talks, trying to regroup. We've put trying for a baby on hold as he seeks therapy for this. He still is considering going to the police for the harassment. My heart is broken for him and also trying to come to terms with the truth, that Jess, who I've known for years, would do something like this. I was prepared to uncover an affair, but never this. Update 2. It's been just under 2 weeks since Jess was told to move out, and I'm almost embarrassed at how much more dramatic things have gotten. I should have expected it, considering the revelations from last time, but still. I want to thank everyone who reached out, publicly or privately. Your support means more than I can say and gave both of us courage we didn't know we had. First of all, Jess did not go quietly or gracefully. The first week after my husband's dad and stepmom confronted her, she completely alternated between denial, then tears, then rage. We tried to keep our distance, but she started bombarding both my husband and me with frantic texts, voicemails, even emails. It got to the point where I had to block her number and social accounts for my own mental health. My husband, who has always hated confrontation, left his phone in airplane mode for days. Then, last Thursday, we got a knock on the door at 2 a.m. and it was Jess, drunk, sobbing, pounding so hard on the glass I honestly thought it was going to break. My husband wanted to pretend we weren't home, but she kept screaming his name, and honestly, for a split second, I was scared she was going to hurt herself for us. So he went outside. I stayed watching from the kitchen, phone in hand ready to call the cops. I could see her trying to hug him. He pushed her away and told her to leave before he called the police. She started yelling that he owed her a chance to apologize, to try to fix this before it's too late. She said she had nothing left, that her mom didn't believe her, that she just wanted to talk privately one more time, please. Our lights were all on at this point, and a neighbor came out to check, so finally she left, still crying. The whole thing made me feel like I was in some crazy soap opera. That Friday, my husband and I went over to his dad's house in the afternoon to collect some stuff and return his extra garage key, honestly, to make one less excuse for Jess to manipulate a reason to see us. We didn't want to see Jess, but his dad said she was out for the afternoon. Turns out that was a lie. The minute we walked into the kitchen, Jess came in from the backyard. This time, she was icy cold, no tears, no yelling, just this dead stare. She told us she was done being the bad guy because people will believe whatever story they want. It was creepy, honestly. She looked at me and told me, "You did this, you made him hate me." Then she left before anyone could say a word. That would have rattled me enough, but then my husband's stepmom cornered us as we tried to leave. She was in full tears and, in a twist I never expected, apologized for not believing my husband right away. She said she realized after a few days of watching Jess's behavior that she'd never seen her own daughter act this erratic or manipulative, and confessed she used to think Jess would never do something so horrible, but now she's not so sure. She hugged my husband and promised to support him through whatever happened next. That weekend, things got even wilder. Jess apparently decided to preemptively tell her version of events on social media, a series of vague but pointed posts, alluding to being betrayed by the people closest to you, talking about people who are supposed to protect you exploiting you, and hinting that family secrets are toxic. She never named my husband, but it was obvious to anyone who knows us. We both started getting messages from old friends from college, distant cousins, even a couple co-workers, asking if we were okay. My anxiety peaked, worrying that this would spill over into my work or my family. Mixed into all of this, my husband found out that Jess had applied for a lease in a complex 2 blocks from us. I can't even make this up. His dad found out when the emergency contact forms came through, and he called us, stressed out of his mind, asking if we should be worried. That was when we both agreed my husband had to file for a restraining order, not just to protect him but to make it clear there would be legal consequences if Jess harassed us again. So, Monday morning, I went with him to the courthouse, where he filed for an order of protection. It was surreal sitting in that waiting room, surrounded by people in their own very real situations, and realizing just how truly wild our own story was. It took hours, but the judge granted a temporary restraining order. Later that night we found out, via his dad, we blocked Jess entirely by this point, that she'd received official notice and had a total meltdown, throwing things, screaming at her mom that he always chooses everyone else over me, and locking herself in her room for hours. That sounds dramatic, but it's been blessedly quiet since then. My husband started therapy last week. Finally, he came home from his first session exhausted but a bit lighter, if that makes sense. He spent a long time apologizing to me for failing to protect me from all this, which of course broke my heart, and after a long talk, we both finally admitted we needed to hit pause on trying for a baby, maybe even consider moving out of town altogether. It's honestly so much to process. I went from thinking my marriage was on the brink of infidelity to learning I married a man who's been manipulated and threatened for years by someone he and I both called family. If there's a silver lining, it's that we're finally talking, really talking, about everything. What we want, what we need to let go of, the boundaries for our families, or what still counts as family now. His relationship with his dad is still complicated, as you can imagine, but at least now the full truth is out. We're working on forgiveness and figuring out how to move forward. My guilt over not noticing what was really happening is something I'm still processing, but I think, finally, we're turning a corner. So, that's where we are. Jess is moving out in a few days, the restraining order will be in effect, so with luck, we can start rebuilding some kind of normal. Will we ever forgive her? I honestly doubt it. Can we forgive each other for the ways we ignored warning signs or failed to protect ourselves? Maybe. That's going to be our next, maybe biggest, chapter. I guess if there's anything anyone reading this could take away, it's that when you feel crazy for suspecting something, trust yourself. And don't underestimate how deep someone else's issues can run, or how much damage silence can cause. I never thought my life would look like an episode of Law and Order, but here we are. Update 3. I wish I could say things immediately got better after Jess moved out, but if anything, chaos just changed shape. Maybe whoever said family drama is like an earthquake, count on aftershocks was onto something. The past couple of weeks have been the most surreal, emotionally draining, and, I'll admit it, at times completely unhinged, period of my life. I'll try to capture everything, but writing it down makes me realize how far into bizarro world we really spiraled. For a blessed 14 days, Jess seemed to vanish. Her move out was, for lack of a better word, clinical. Her stepmom helped pack, her dad was conspicuously absent, and she loaded her U-Haul by herself. She didn't say goodbye, or even look at any of us. I half expected a dramatic scene, but she left in silence. The air in their house instantly felt different, less tense, almost hollow. We spent the next day just breathing. I honestly thought we'd be turning the page, but Jess wasn't done. Her brand new apartment turned out to be real, and 2 blocks away. For the first week, we didn't see or hear from her, and I buried myself in the fantasy that everything would finally settle. My husband dove into therapy, sometimes coming home raw, sometimes lighter. We talked. We cried. We watched too much Parks and Rec. Things felt nearly human again. Then, on Friday night, came the first sign that quiet hadn't meant over. My husband's dad showed up at our door, at 9 p.m., pale and shaken. He handed me an envelope and said, "Jess left this for both of you. I don't want to read it. But I think you should." He wouldn't come in, just stood on the porch repeating, quietly, "I'm sorry." He looked broken, older than ever. Inside the envelope were 2 things, a handwritten, rambling 6-page letter from Jess, and a cheap USB flash drive. The letter was every bit the car crash you'd imagine, apologies warring with accusations, "I loved you before she did. If things were fair, we would have found each other," memories from childhood twisted to sound like fate, unhinged promises about therapy and fixing everything if we just talked to her one last time. She wrote, "I just want to be in your life, even if it hurts. Isn't that better than pretending we don't exist to each other?" She never mentioned the restraining order, but mocked your Hollywood police theatrics. It was mostly directed at my husband, but she also addressed me, claiming I came between what was natural and robbed us of healing. The USB drive was worse. Hesitant but needing closure, and, TBH, to know what we were up against legally, we plugged it in. It contained a scrapbook, dozens of photos and short, crude video clips from the last 7 years. Us at college parties, her and my husband at the beach, selfies from family holidays, snippets of the 3 of us at concerts. But the captions she'd added were disturbing. Things like, "If only he'd known how much I watched him." On every photo, she superimposed little hearts and sometimes, let's just say, suggestive notes. There was audio, too, voice memos of Jess talking, sometimes drunk, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, about her secret. They sounded like unhinged voicemails to herself. Throughout, she alternated blaming me, blaming my husband, and blaming her mom for not protecting her from the pain of loving the wrong person. It felt like a horror movie's found footage montage. I felt sick to my stomach, but at least it was proof, if we ever needed it, of her instability and the harassment. That night, my husband finally called his dad and told him what was on the drive. His dad broke down. He confessed that Jess had been spiraling at her new apartment. He'd gotten half a dozen late-night, barely coherent phone calls about ending things, about telling everyone the real story, even about disappearing for good. He'd begged her to get psychiatric help, but she refused. My husband's stepmom, after weeks of icy silence, called us crying, saying she now realized Jess needed real help, that it wasn't just a phase, and that she couldn't keep excusing her daughter's behavior anymore. There was relief in hearing her say it, but it didn't erase the damage. It's a strange kind of mourning, to lose faith in people you used to love. And then, the next week, things went nuclear. One of my husband's distant cousins called to warn us. Jess had tried to make good on her family secrets threats by emailing several extended family members detailed, and entirely fabricated, accusations about my husband and me. She painted herself as a victim of years of manipulation, telling people I'd been trying to replace her, that my husband was obsessive, and that she was being driven from her own family by lies. The subject line was literally, "There's more you don't know." My phone and Facebook blew up with notifications. People I'd barely spoken to since our wedding texted asking, "Is everything okay?" Worse, someone forwarded me a screenshot of a private group chat. Jess had posted the old college photo of me, her, and my husband, captioned, "Guess which one of us isn't really family?" At first, I was mortified, panic tears, dread, even guilt just for existing in this mess. Then anger took over. For the first time in years I felt genuinely, incandescently furious, not just hurt, not just betrayed, not just tired, but mad enough to finally start reaching out for help. Instead of hiding, my husband and I put together a statement, short, factual, but no holds barred. We sent a group email to all the relatives who'd gotten Jess's message. Jess has been struggling with serious mental health issues. There is an active order of protection, and all accusations are the result of her illness. We ask our family to respect our privacy and not to engage with her threats. I added my own, one-on-one calls with the few people I trusted most, so the narrative didn't get twisted anymore. I don't know if we handled it right. There is no family etiquette handbook for situations this off the rails. Within 2 days, the chaos faded. Some cousins sent supportive replies, some never responded. Only one particularly gossipy aunt seemed to think where there's smoke, there's fire, but honestly, at this point, who cares? Now, 3 weeks since Jess's move, things are almost eerily calm. No more social media stunts. No more 2 a.m. door pounding. My husband and his dad are patching things up, slowly, sometimes with long walks, sometimes just silent hugs. His stepmom is, for the first time ever, in her own therapy, and texted me an apology every day for nearly a week. Our friends, the real ones, have started inviting us out again, bowling, trivia nights, cheap tacos. 2 different friends have jokingly offered to run Crazy Jess patrols in our neighborhood, just in case, but honestly, I don't feel afraid anymore. I won't pretend my marriage is miraculously fixed. Both of us are still rebuilding trust, day by day. My husband is still unlearning years of guilt and shame. Sometimes we talk for hours, sometimes we don't say anything at all but just watch reruns with our feet entwined, holding hands like lifelines. There are still nightmares. There are still what-ifs. But there's also relief, and, dare I say it, hope. The best part, the actual silver lining, the thing that keeps both of us moving, is we're not alone in this anymore. We shined a light on dark corners. We chose each other through the mess. We haven't decided if we'll leave town, or try for that future we were dreaming about, not yet. For now, quiet is good. For now, we're learning what it means to be safe, and to forgive, not Jess, not yet, but ourselves, for all that we missed and all that's happened. I can't say this is over. Family aftershocks last a long, long time.